Hello class, in this lecture we will be looking at the most powerful objection to identity theory, which leads us to a new theory of mind in the coming lectures, which is functionalism. And that objection to identity theory is multiple realizability. So let's remind ourselves what identity theory says. Identity theory says that for any mental state M, there is a brain state B such that M equals B. So for instance, if I am in the mental state pain because, ow, I poked myself, right? I have some kind of C fiber activation occurring in my brain and nervous system. So the implication here is that an organism is in pain if and only if a certain type of brain state occurs, which means that C fiber activation is both necessary and sufficient for the mental state pain. M equals B. Mental state is brain state. The identity theory is also a metaphysical theory about general mental types, like pain, at least some of which are tokened by non-human creatures, which leads us to some interesting thought experiments. So if pain is C fiber activation, because C fiber activation is the human nervous system and brain's way of telling us we're in pain, what happens when you poke an octopus or you snip off the tentacle of a friendly alien? Besides being rude, it seems to give a little bit of trouble for identity theory, because octopuses, don't have C fibers, and they in fact don't have brains at all like human brains. They have neuronal structures distributed all the way throughout their tentacles. And aliens, it's highly plausible, if there were aliens, it's highly plausible that they would not have brain structures like humans. So if pain is C fiber activation and there are no C fibers in an octopus, nor are there C fibers in an alien, can they just not be in pain? This objection, this thought experiment, gives rise to the multiple realizability objection. So what we want is a sense of pain as a mental state that's multiply realizable across different kinds of brain states, or across different kinds of brains and minds at all, because it seems plausible and to fit with our intuition that if you punch an octopus or if you punch an alien, I'm not recommending you do this, that they'll feel pain, but they won't have C fiber activation. And so the identity theorist is going to tell you, well, they weren't in pain because there wasn't C fiber activation and M equals B. They had some kind of mental state, but it wasn't pain because they didn't have the associated or identical B associated with the C fiber activation. So here's the point. Every mental state is identical to a physical state of the brain, which says that the brain activity is necessary for pain because it's identical to pain. So the hypothesis becomes even more ambitious when we realize that the brain state theorist is not just saying that pain is a brain state. He is, of course, concerned to maintain that every physiological state is a brain state. Thus, if we can find even one psychological predicate which can clearly be applied to both a mammal and an octopus, but whose physical-chemical correlate is different in these two cases, the brain state theory will have collapsed. So multiple realizability tells us that mental states can be realized by different physical processes excuse me, or structures, that there isn't some supremely important sense of the human brain that gives us mental states. Those mental states are attributable to creatures without human brains or mammalian brains at all. This is what the thought experiment teaches us. It's possible for an octopus, a human, and a Martian to all experience the same type of mental state, pain if we get punched, in spite of significant neural differences. So there's a couple ways we can express the worry, which is that there's a conceptual worry, which is that agents with the same type of mental states but very different brains are easily conceived. Putnam has us think of what he calls super Spartans, where they surely feel pain, but they don't express any outward behavior, and they have a different sort of neural makeup, but they look and act just like humans otherwise. So identity theory looks doomed as a metaphysics of mind, because we can imagine people like us or creatures like us, but that don't have the C fiber activation that identity theory requires. But there's also an empirical worry, which is that it seems overwhelmingly likely that we'll discover at least one creature with the same mental type, but with a distinct neural structure, which looks like an octopus. So identity theory looks doomed as a science of mind. Neither can it be a metaphysics nor a science of mind. So one possible fix for identity theory is to admit a relativism. Perhaps in the face of the challenge from multiple realizability, the identity theory simply accepts the identity theorist accepts that there are no creature general mental state types. Instead, there are mental state types, hyphenated, types for a creature. So there's pain for a human, or pain for a cat, pain for an octopus, pain for a Martian. And suitably adjusted, the identity theory would then identify mental state types for a creature with neural structures associated with that particular creature. So we get a relativized identity theory, which says for any human mental state, M, there is a human brain state B such that M equals B. We've relativized to humans here. So another possible fix is to give us token identity. So identity theory is a type physicalism. There's a type of mental state pain which is associated with a particular brain state C fiber activation. But then there are instances of pain. So I get poked here or I get poked here. Those are two different tokens of the type of pain. So we can also give a token physicalism for identity theory. For any particular mental state M, little m now because it's a token, rather than a full type that captures all sorts of tokens, there's a particular brain state or physical state B, little b, such that M equals B. So this avoids the worry, right? Because there's no longer a particular type of mental state, pain in general, which is associated with C fiber activation. There's just an instance of a mental state of pain associated with an instance of a brain state, in which case it's C fiber activation. But that could be all sorts of other things as well. There are worries for token physicalism, which is that it's very explanatorily weak. The thesis simply says that for any particular mental phenomenon, it is identical with some physical phenomenon or other. And that looks trivial. It provides no materials for generalization, prediction, or explanation of our mental lives. We can't say, you were in pain, therefore you have C fiber activation. We say, you were in pain, therefore something happened in your brain, right? And that doesn't seem so helpful. And again, it lacks for this reason, it lacks the sort of scientific motivation that inspired identity theory in the first place. So in the face of the challenge from multiple realizability, identity theory seems forced into a dilemma. We either maintain type identity and fail to accommodate multiple realizability and the idea that non-mammals can experience pain despite lacking C fibers. Or we can opt for a token identity and lose all explanatory power. So in light of this impossible choice, neither one good, theorists of mind have moved on, and in our next lecture we will be looking at the theory that they move on to, which to this day remains quite popular, and that is functionalism.